That Tuesday morning in late May, I knew something was off the moment I stepped into the community garden. The air should have been alive with the soft, familiar hum of my bisa sound I'd grown to love after years of tending them. But instead, there was nothing. Just an eerie silence that hit me like a punch to the gut. No, 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 I whispered, my boots crunching faster on the gravel path as I hurried toward the apiary corner of our 6-acre garden in Pinewood Estates. From 10 feet away, the sight stopped me cold. Hundreds of tiny bee corpses littered the ground in front of the hives, their delicate wings twisted at unnatural angles. My coffee slipped from my hand, splashing hot against my jeans, but I barely noticed. The first hive's entrance was a graveyard, the second no better. By the fourth, my hands were trembling with a mix of grief and rage. Dr. Lucas Reed, what happened? Sarah, a garden volunteer, stood behind me, her watering can frozen mid-tilt, her eyes wide with shock. Someone killed them, I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. And I'm going to find out who. Sarah blinked, clutching her can tighter. Should we call the cops? Oh, we will, I replied, already pulling out my phone. But first, I need samples. See, I'm not just some guy who likes bees. I'm Dr. Lucas Reed, head of the state apiary lab, with a PhD in entomology and a knack for testifying in court on colony collapse and pesticide misuse. Whoever did this picked the wrong bee guy to mess with. I jogged back to my house, a 5-minute walk from the garden, and grabbed my field kit. My home office wasn't the glossy kind you'd see in a magazine, not like the McMansions that filled Pinewood Estates. It was a chaotic mix of microscopes, specimen jars, and bee gear, a scientist's haven. I'd moved here after my divorce 2 years ago, drawn by the community garden. Last spring, I'd conned VY and said the HOA to let me install 4 beehives, and until today, it had been smooth sailing. Now, as I collected dead bees and soil samples, the chemical stench hit me a sharp, unnatural odor that had no business in a residential area. This wasn't an accident. A young cop, Officer Daniels, showed up, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Vandalism, he asked, notepad in hand. Worse, I said. Someone wiped out 4 honeybee colonies with what I suspect is industrial-grade pesticide. These aren't just bugs theory worth thousands, and this could violate state in environmental laws. He scratched his head, clearly unimpressed. So someone murdered your bugs. The way he said it made my blood boil, but I kept cool, ing him the details while he scribbled half-hearted notes. He left with a vague promise to look into it, and I knew I was on my own. That night, I took the samples to the lab. Being the boss has perks no one questions late-night tests. The chromatography results confirmed my worst fears. A commercial-grade neonicotinoid pesticide, the kind that requires a special license. This was no hardware store spray. This was deliberate. DRIVYing home. I replayed last month's HOA meeting. The agenda had included a surprise item, concerns about the beehives. Victor Hayes, our HOA president, had introduced Laura Bennett, a new board member who'd moved in 8 months ago. Laura was a 4-spanning overnight street parking, forcing neighbors to repaint non-conforming doors and ousting the old garden coordinator over weeds. She stood up that night, facing the crowd like a politician. These beehives are a menace, she declared. My grandson got stung last week. He's 6. What if he'd been allergic? I'd raised my hand, keeping my tone calm. I'm sorry about your grandson, Laura, but those were wasps, not honeybees. Different insects. Honeybees aren't aggressive unless their hive is threatened. I can give you a field guide if you'd like. Her face reddened. I know what stung him, Dr. Reed. Those hives don't belong here. They're tanking property values. I countered with data studies showing apiaries boost property values, but she cut me off. People are concerned. Something needs to be done. The meeting ended with the board promising a re-VYEW. No action taken. As we left, Laura brushed past me with a tight smile. This isn't over, she muttered. An older neighbor, George, warned me to watch out. She's got a vendetta against anything that doesn't fit her perfect suburb, he said. I shrugged it off. The bees aren't hurting anyone. Now, staring at the lab results, George's warning echoed. I pulled up the community directory. Laura Bennett, realtor. Tom Bennett, owner of Bennett's Landscaping and Lawn Care, a business with access to heavy-duty pesticides. Well, I muttered. The next morning, I called my buddy Nate, who helped with the garden's irrigation. Ever work with Tom Bennett? I asked. Nate's voice dropped. Yeah, his crew sprays everything. No way they follow guidelines. Laura runs their office. Got keys to the supply shed. I asked him to help set up wildlife cameras around the garden, just in case. I spent the afternoon going door to door, posing as a bee safety advocate. Most neighbors were sympathetic, some genuinely upset. Mrs. Alvarez, a few doors from the Bennett's, lowered her voice. Laura's been raging about those bees for months. At book club, she called a liability and said she'd handle it if the HOA didn't. A teenager, Ethan, saw Laura near the garden the night before the bees died, carrying a sprayer. I thought she was doing roses or something, he said, nervous. It was like 11 p.m. The pieces were falling into place. Laura had motive, access, and opportunity. I set up the cameras with Nate and installed a new observation hive in my front window, VY Seibel from Laura's jogging route, with a sign, State Apiary Research Project Monitoring in Progress. 2 days later, an emergency HOA meeting was called. I arrived early, laptop and documents in hand. Laura walked in with Victor, faltering when she saw me, but recovering with a fake smile. Victor opened the meeting, somber. The bees died from poisoning. We're here to discuss next steps. Laura jumped in. Whatever killed them, maybe a disease could endanger residents, especially kids. I couldn't help it. I interrupted. It wasn't a disease. They were poisoned with a restricted neonicotinoid pesticide. I confirmed it at the state lab. The room buzzed. Laura's smile tightened. Lab tests. How'd you get those so fast? I showed the chromatography charts, knowing they'd look official. I run the lab. She paled, then rallied. This proves beehives are too dangerous. They need to go. The debate dragged on. Laura pushed to remove even the empty hives. I argued for replacing the colonies with better security. The board compromised. The hives could stay, but no new bees until the investigation wrapped. In the parking lot, Laura cornered me. I know what you're doing, making this personal. I met her gaze. I know what you did, Laura. That pesticide's only for licensed pros. She snapped, I have no idea what you're talking about, and stormed off. The next evening, Tom Bennett showed up at my door, looking uneasy. I think Laura was involved, he admitted, slumping in my leave-vying room. She's obsessed with perfection of house, the HOA, everything. She thinks the bees hurt our property value. He handed me a purchase record for Enforcer Pro, Alvara. System. Sorry, but it seems like your message got cut off. Could you please VY to the rest of the prompt or clarify what you'd like me to do next? I have the outline and the story draft up to a certain point, but it looks like the artifact content was truncated. Let me know how you'd like to proceed.